UFC 301 from Brazil is in the books. We got you covered with the post-fight show, your reactions, your recap, your breakdown. I got Brian, I got Malachi. First of all, Malachi, I think this is your first time on the show, my man. How's it going?
Yes, sir, man. Thank you for the invite. I was surprised to, hop on for the request, but I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely. And Brian making it back once again. Glad to have you back, my man. How's the night going and how was your time watching the fights?
Pretty good, man. I'm not gonna lie. I feel like leading up to this card, everyone was like, it's gonna be a bad card, let down from 300, which 300 is a tough card to live up to. So I think anything following it, you're gonna be like, it's not as good. But I had fun tonight. Like, I'm not gonna lie. It was a pretty solid night of fights. So I'm looking forward to getting into it.
Absolutely. So I think that brings up a great talking point, right? Coming up right after UFC 300, you have one of the, if not the greatest card of all time. And, we got some people in the comment or in the viewing already. Make sure you guys like the video if you so please to do so. We appreciate the support with that here with our Fight Bananas out here. But yeah, UFC 301 on paper didn't look really that great, right? It left you a lot wanting a lot more. Of course, Alex Pereira versus Jamal Hill was supposed to be the main event of this fight. But in the end of the day, I think what we got was a really strong card, right? It was one that was underhyped but over delivered, right? So I appreciate you, Sean, hopping in, my man. And if you weren't already like Sean, jump into the live stream watch alongs that we're gonna continue to do here on Fight Bananas. Dave's spearheading those. We have John and Michael over there. We also had L earlier as well. So continue that. But as far as the tonight's card, underhyped, over delivered, 3 finishes, 2 going to the cards with the co-main and main event. But I thought it was an exciting card overall. Malachi, I'll let you start, my man. Did you feel this card over delivered on the expectations we all had for it?
Um, I wouldn't say. Actually, yeah, I would. At least for the on the main card end, you know. But like you said in the beginning, I feel like it just got a bad rep coming from 300. Like it's hard, if your name not Conor McGregor, it's hard to uh, have an event as good as what we had just witnessed a couple of weeks ago. So I did think this card did deliver. All you had 3 finishes, especially in the first round. And the main event, like shout out to Steve Ursay, like to be ranked number 10, to be given a shot, and actually like even though he lost, he lived up to the moment. And MMA for me is one of those sports where like if you didn't like get a knockout or a submission like we saw earlier in the first round, like there's no losers, but that's just like my own opinion. Like there's really no losers in an MMA fight, especially when you got like a back and forth like the main event. So I do think the card delivered.
Absolutely. I think to your point, Steve Urseg made this card way more valuable than it really should have been with the storyline that was going on in the main event. Because on a lot of cards, it was 2-2 going into that 5th round. And Steve Urseg, after the first round, was doing a good job of, stuffing the initial takedown. But if he was getting takedown, doing a really good job getting back up and made some mistakes in the first round. And Brian, I'll let you actually start off breaking that down. Did you feel, first off, just break down on the fight for the main event, Steve Urseg versus Alexander Pantoja. But did you feel like the mistakes of him shooting those takedowns cost him the fight? And what did you feel like was maybe the reasoning behind him wanting to do that?
Yeah. So I definitely feel like there was a lot of mistakes made. I thought that Urseg fought very, very well. First off, shout out to him. You go toe to toe with Pantoja, who's excellent. There's always going to be props. Like you didn't get finished, you didn't get submitted. I do think that there were definitely a lot of mistakes as far as going for the takedowns. Pantoja's scrambles were excellent. You just weren't winning the game on the ground, but you were winning it on the feet, right? I felt that early on, it seemed like he wasn't going first. It felt like Pantoja was the one kind of initiating the action, and Pantoja is so quick and so fast that even if he's not super technical, right, he's still scoring points by just being aggressive and getting at you, right, and getting inside. And so, when you have a smaller guy who's, you don't know whether he's going to get inside to strike with you or get inside to take you down, confuses you, right? So it kind of seemed like he had trouble with that in the first couple rounds. But later on the fight, he really, I think, was able to maintain distance, and set up his striking very, very well. And I really thought he would have won that fifth round if he didn't go for the takedowns, right? And again, like, you were losing that going into the fight, and that's on your coaches to say, like, hey, we need to keep this fight on the feet, right? Like, even if you think that you are a great scrambler, he said in the post-fight interview that usually he wins those exchanges, and that's great. But for this fight, you're not, right? And that's kind of the thing, is you got to check your own ego and be like, damn, with anybody else, I'm good on that, on the ground. But in this fight, I'm second, right? And so it's like, I kind of want to see them run it back, just because, you see Steve, like I said, that fifth round, he's like, I'm just going to strike. You could be a champion right now. And that changes your life, right? And in all fairness, it's his first year in the UFC. I think it's his fourth fight in the UFC. So, like, to do that, that's fantastic. But, like, so maybe it's just an experience thing. I don't know. But there definitely were some mistakes that I felt cost him in the end.
It's hard because, to get a UFC championship shot is one of the hardest things in any sport, right? You're not relying on any teammates. You're out there by yourself, and you have to go get those wins, and usually quite impressively, to earn yourself a title shot. This was a moment that Steve Urseg, not that he didn't earn it. Like you said, Brian, 3 fights in the past year. This was his fourth one, won those first 3 fights in pretty, impressive fashion, or dominating fashion, depending on the fight. But tonight, you have that opportunity. You could have really won that fight. Pantoja, more than some of his most previous fights, showed his tiredness a little bit more. Like they said on commentary, he does have that look of showing, the fatigue, but sometimes tends to push past that. You saw that in the Moreno fight, that he, seemed to get tired, but from there he was able to kind of re-ramp, get that second win. Tonight, you didn't see that as much, but you saw the mistakes of Steve Urseg just trying to take the fight on the ground one too many times. I think after that first attempt in the early in the fifth round, where he got him down, was able to back off, should have kind of kept it there. Malachi, thoughts on the main event, and to follow up on that, do you think Steve Urseg will make it back to the title picture at some point in his career?
Absolutely. I think the biggest advantage that I noticed with Steve Ursa in this division, Dave mentioned on commentary, is his reach and height. Like, he's really big for the division, and in all his previous matchups, you really saw that reach advantage come into play. And I think the only thing, as you mentioned earlier, the only thing that really why he lost was the just experience. This was like his first 5 round fight in the UFC, first time on the big stage. Um, I think he could definitely make it back. Yeah, I don't see nobody really stopping him now, especially after a loss like this. He gonna learn from this.
Yeah, I think the experience, like you said, played a big factor. And, one of the things that was kind of hard to watch was seeing Steve Urseg just be so disappointed in himself after the fight, right? You could see the defeat on his face, knowing he was, just a mistake away from potentially being the UFC flyweight champion. So, before we turn the page to the potential final chapter for the King of Rio, Jose Aldo, potentially not, right? He didn't actually say retirement. We might see another iteration of Jose Aldo in the future. But before we close that out, I just kind of want to talk about Pantoja's potential next challenger. I think really there's two people for that opportunity that comes to mind. One is going to be Muhammad Makayev, right? 3-0 over his last couple fights. Wins over Alex Perez, Tim Elliott, Jafal Filio, of course. But he's just so dominating. 12-0, such a good grappler. I think he's an interesting one. And the other obvious choice, Amir Albazi, right? 17-1, coming off of a win versus Kai Kara France. Before that, Costa, and then before that, Francisco Figueiredo, of course. But both those guys, I think, are potential prospects that we couldn't see, coming down the line. So, Brian, just a quick just answer for me. Who do you think potentially is the more likely matchup, or who do you think we do see next against Pantoja?
I'm actually going to go a third option and throw out Roy Val. That was such a close fight that I actually wouldn't be surprised if they ran that back. I would, just for legacy's sake, I want to say Moreno, but he's already lost to Pantoja twice, so that's probably not going to happen anytime soon. But yeah, man, it's tough though, because I think that just looking at Pantoja, he's been so dominant that you know, it's almost hard to match him up with anyone. You could be like, this is going to be the guy. Um, and I know he's going to take some time off, so that kind of gives your challengers, a second to show that they should be the number one contender. But I think there's a lot of options here. Like I really do, and that's kind of what you want. You want an open division with a lot of guys, a lot of challengers. So we'll see. But I do want to see that ran back and just kind of see, if Royval can get that one back.
Yeah, especially after, like you said, he just came off of another win. He took the loss against the champ, but beat Brandon Moreno in the next fight for him. So I think that's a potential third option too, which is a great choice there. Malachi, do you think maybe that's Sean Sterling saying bring Mighty Mouse back for the division? I would love to see that. Still think he has a lot of gas and left in the tank, especially over his wins. I can't remember the guy's ATT, but that flying knee that he hit was beautiful as well. Adriano Moraes, I think that's his name.
Yeah,
But yeah,
it was
so
the guy he
so now,
lost to, I think.
yeah, so lost to him, got the dub back against him, and then fought against Rod Tang. So that would be fun to see Mighty Mouse back in the UFC. Highly doubtful, but also fun to wish. But Malachi, real quick, like I said before we get to Jose Aldo, who do you think we see next for Pantoja, or do you think it's more likely we kind of see a title eliminator as he takes a break?
I would actually agree and think it's Royval, but I'm a little biased because I know his teammate. Yeah, his teammate is like is in the MMA media sphere, and I talk to him all the time. So I kind of just got a little, biased. And Royval is a good dude, so I'm kind of biased, and I would like to see him get another title shot, especially going into Mexico and doing what he did against Moreno. Yeah, I would like to see that again.
Absolutely. But let's get to I think for a lot of people, the people's main event, right? The King of Rio. It was the last fight of his contract for Jose Aldo. So there was a lot of speculation coming in. Is this his last fight, right? Do we see him take off the UFC gloves, leave him in the center of the octagon, walk out and go become, a really excellent boxer from what we've seen. He's really good with the boxing as well. So Malachi, I'll throw this one to you. Was this the performance that you expected to see from Jose Aldo? And if we do see him again in the UFC cage, who is that against?
I don't know who that be against, but this is definitely not the last time we will see him. And this performance is definitely expected, especially coming off from a year-long break, losing to Yan, who I thought, he almost Yan did kind of dominate. But I think in a better circumstance, he could have beat Yan. But I definitely don't know. I don't know who he will fight come if he resign. But what to move on after the UFC? I definitely see him doing some more boxing. I think he want to box too, just for the money aspect. I mean, obvious like we see MMA guys leave this sport. Francis just pretty much showed the world that, hey man, we can come into this sport and make a buttload of money before we step back into the MMA cage. So I don't know who Jose will fight if he do resign, but I do know I do have a guess that if he stay a free agent, he's moving to that ring to get that big payday.
Absolutely. Now he has the freedom to do so. I think that's a good point. I do think it's more likely we see the next time we see him, it's in a boxing ring versus the octagon in that case. So kind of same thing on that. Brian, what do you think is the future for Jose Aldo? And kind of bringing up Sean's point about tonight's performance, did you think Martinez showed up tonight, or what did you think was the main reason behind his luster performance?
See, so I have two thoughts, right? I think that it's similar to Usyk in the first couple rounds. It didn't feel like he was going versus Aldo. It felt like Aldo was dictating that action, right? Mighty Mouse likes to use the term the void, and it kind of felt like Aldo was willing to go into that void and strike first, and then Martinez didn't seem like he was really cutting angles, kind of just standing in front of Aldo, right? And that's a mistake on his end, but on the other end, Aldo is so quick, man. Like that speed difference was insane. The defense was great, right? So on the one hand, I'm like, I can't even blame Martinez because Aldo was just really, really fucking good, right? And for me, I'm like, okay, I look at the bantamweight division, I'm like, a Peter Yan fight would be really fun. Maybe a Cejudo return fight would be fun. Song Yadong, like, there's so many options there to where I'm like, I don't think that you just feed Aldo, scrums. Not to call Martinez a scrub, but I I think he's still good enough to fight those, high level guys, right? I know that Peter Yan specifically called out Chito Vera. Chito Vera is not the guy who could fight Aldo at bantamweight, right? Um, so honestly, for me, I'm looking at one of those fights. I'm like, yo, Aldo still got it. He's one of our greatest champions ever. Like, why waste him, versus some guy that most of the fans don't know? Like, let's get him in there with a guy like a Peter Yan who's looking to, make his way back to the title, right? You beat Aldo, hey, you want to call for Sugar Sean, like, all good. So that's kind of who I would look at. I think it's crazy that he still looks this good at how old is Aldo? 36, 37. Um, it's more likely that he probably does do boxing before he signs another UFC deal if that's what he wants to do. But man, like, it's just crazy. Usually you see guys slow down at his age, especially guys who have had such a long career fighting top tier competition. But he still got it, man. And like that's he's at that point where he can kind of do whatever. And I feel like if he wants to, if he's coming back to fight in the UFC, he's doing it against the top tier guys. And I don't know if he's going to make a title run. I don't know if we're going to see Aldo in a title fight anytime soon, but I think he's going to want to fight guys at that level.
Yeah, excuse me. It wasn't Young too. It was Marab, his last fight. I got
Marab
them
was his
too.
last fight,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
But
So, yeah,
Jan,
the one he lost.
just, kind of bouncing off that, the Jan that faced Aldo, sorry, in Saudi Arabia and destroyed him, and the Aldo that was because it was his first time, if you guys remember, making that 135-pound cut. I think that the Aldo and Peter Yan, the iterations that we have of them now, is very different than back then. So that would be a fun fight. I do agree with that one. I know the fight that was supposed to happen, supposedly was supposed to be Jose Aldo versus Dominic Cruz, right? That was what was being talked about for this card overall. But obviously, it ended up being Jonathan Martinez. But I do think that's a fun fight. If I'm Sean O'Malley, what I'm doing if I get a win against Marab, which obviously that's no easy task, one of the best wrestlers in the division, if not the UFC. But if he gets the win against Marab, I'm calling out Jose Aldo, right? Because if you're Sean O'Malley, what a notch that would be to your belt to add Jose Aldo. And then, it showed tonight that he's not over the hill just yet. Do I think Jose wins that fight? No. I do think Sean O'Malley, just with his length and his speed, versus Aldo at this time of his career is different, right? If, talking about prime Jose Aldo, obviously, I do think he destroys the legs of Sean O'Malley. But, yeah, I do think, if I'm Sean O'Malley and you get past Merab Dvalishvili, you send a tweet out to Jose Aldo inviting him to the octagon for maybe a last moment there, and maybe that's perfect timing for Jose Aldo. Maybe he sits on his, morals, kind of goes boxes, makes some money, then comes back for a title shot, 16, 18 months from now, so that's potentially what might happen. So, Brian, I know you had in your name, you had Gilly Gang as it, because we did see two beautiful guillotines tonight. We saw one from Lionheart Smith. You know what I mean? Like, oh my God. Like, for him to go and get that upset win, beautiful as well. We'll talk about the Michelle Pereira one too, and that flying backflip knee to the face that we might want to call it. But Anthony Lionheart Smith, man, Malachi, I'll let you start with this one. Just being able to be the veteran that he is, going against an unranked guy that was supposed to win, right? He was supposed to get the win this fight, able to get the guillotine, man. What was your reaction to that victory by Smith?
Um, Experience played a role tonight, and that's what we saw with Anthony Smith. I made a comment to I think it was, and apologies if I mispronounce his name, Mike Malott. the middleweight from Toronto. I told him one time how, maybe like a decade ago, guys who like in their 30s, mid 30s, or will be falling off. But just with like just where we at now with modern technology and science and just it's like guys in their 30s, they just keep rising. Mid 30s keep rising. Late 30s keep rising. Like you just see they just not falling off. And as they physical is not falling off, that experience is still going up. And you just saw that with Anthony Smith. Like he just not coming down. He's still in the top 10 of the light heavyweight division. I know a lot of guys, praise John Jones for the longevity, but you gotta give your props to Anthony Smith for still being a top contender, at this age and with the many fights he had. He got like a crazy amount of fights, so it was an incredible victory.
Yeah, I think it's what, 56 fights
But
on
yeah,
his professional card. I think like 37 and 19 or something like that. Maybe 38 after tonight. But Brian, we were talking about this on the live stream, right? And it's the term of being a gatekeeper. Right? Now, there's different levels of being a gatekeeper, right? You have your, Andre Orlovsky, who's unranked. You beat him, you probably go face a ranked guy. You have your Derek Brunson when he used to be here, kind of lower ranked. And then you have your upper tier, gatekeepers. I hate to call him it, but, Rob Whitaker, as of his current iteration, would be classified as that, right? Maybe even potentially, Gilbert Burns would be classified with that, right? So you have a couple of guys that are gatekeepers, but they're still elite fighters. Just because you're not a champion and, you're not able to kind of get that big one and you're still hovering around the ranking, that doesn't make you a bad fighter being a gatekeeper. So the negative connotation that comes with that, do you think that's something that is warranted? Like, do you think, being a gatekeeper is something that should come with that negative connotation? Or do you think that's just something, just overall as like a status that really shouldn't define kind of what a fighter is essentially?
Yeah, I don't think it should have a negative connotation. Like, I think that a lot of these gatekeepers that we look at were either challenging for championships or were a champion at some point, right? So for me, it's like a gatekeeper is just a veteran who's been there, who may not be at that title spot today, but was not too long ago, right? And Anthony Smith is a very good fighter. Like you make a mistake, like we saw tonight, you could be a fighter who was supposed to win, who's supposed to be on the rise, and you get caught and you lose, right? So I know that a lot of people look at these gatekeepers and they're like, well, this person, I hope this person loses, or I need this person to lose so someone else can take a step up. But like, man, these guys are still fighting for championships. Like Anthony Smith wants to be a champion. Like the guys you mentioned, Gilbert Burns, Robert Whitaker, they still want to be champions, right? Um, at a time, Justin Gagey was supposed to be a gatekeeper. Dustin Poirier was supposed to be a gatekeeper, but they won the fights that maybe they weren't supposed to win, and now they're in that upper echelon in conversations for championships, right? Um, so man, I really wish that we would give respect to these veterans who have done it long enough and have fought at the highest level to be considered a gatekeeper. If you're in the UFC and you're winning half of your fights and you're kind of up and down, you're not a gatekeeper, you're just another guy, right? You don't get to be an Anthony Smith unless you were at one point a top tier guy. So for me, it's all respect. Like the fact that you are good enough to be looked at as kind of that door to a championship, that speaks a lot about what you've done. So for me, it's all respect, it's all love. And shout out to Anthony Smith. I don't know where he goes from here, I don't really care, but it's a great night and it made me happy.
Absolutely. And Malachi, I will actually ask your opinion on this. And I know you did have to bounce at some point. So if you do need to leave, you're always more than welcome to just deuces on us. But before I get to you, my man, I do want to introduce the staple of the show here. The guy who brings the energy, who brings kind of this pizzazz, dare I say, when it comes to that side of things. But I want to welcome my boy Blake Schneiders joining us from good boyfriend duty. But he did watch the card. We were texting about it all night. We even saw and talked about a beautiful shin cut where the doctor was sticking his finger inside of the cut of a shin. But Blake, my man, first of all, how you're doing and what was your reaction to this card that really over exceeded expectations in UFC 301?
What's up, boys? How we doing, man? I'm just glad to be on the show with all these beautiful mofos out here. Man, I actually was a huge fan of 301. I thought, I think as far as name value, I think a lot of people, I kind of took a poll of some average non-avid watchers, if you will, some casuals. I don't like to call them casuals, but that's what they are. They're casuals. And a lot of people were like, I thought this card sucked. The name value wasn't there. I don't give a damn about the name value, man. It was about the talent value that was there. And I thought there was a lot of guys on this card that actually stuck out to me. I mean, if you look at the Elvis Brenner and Miktebeg or a lobby fight, like, dude, that fight was fantastic. So guys that you really hadn't really been keeping a massive radar on, but they brought the absolute attention to this card. I thought 301 was awesome, man. I loved it.
Absolutely, like you said, it over delivered. You had a lot of cards or a lot of fights that you had your Bond themes. Those are some great fighters. Both those brothers are. Yeah, a lot of great fighters on this card. But Malachi, I'm going to get to you on this one, and Blake, I'll ask you the same question too because we were just talking about this in the live stream. So, with the negative connotation that comes with the term gatekeeper, do you think that's something that's warranted, or like I said, I'll let Malachi hop on it first because on that side of things. But Malachi, do you think that's something that's warranted, or just thoughts on the word of being a gatekeeper?
I don't like the word because it make it the perception to it is like this supposed to be like an easy fight, and it's like at the end of the day, this is a as goalie gang said, you know, these guys was former was contending for a title or former champions. They still top contenders, top of the line. Yeah, I'm not a fan of it. Yeah, that's all I gotta say to it.
Absolutely, absolutely. But getting to the remainder of this, Blake. So your final thoughts on the gatekeeper terminology. Is that something that you believe is insulting, or do you believe that's something that's just kind of the status of where you're at currently when it comes to when you're as a fighter?
I think it's weird because the gatekeeper term can be taken in two different ways. It can either be somebody who will never be a champion, but he's always around, so therefore you got to let guys fight him. And then I think another version of gatekeeper is kind of like what Donald Cerrone was. Donald Cerrone was a gatekeeper in the sense of he was always like in that top five. Like he was always sniffing a championship match. So you had to fight him. Like there's no way you're not going to go through him to fight in these fights and to fight the champion because he was so high level for such a long time. So it depends on who they're calling a gatekeeper and how they're calling him that, because there's different ways you can look at it. And I 100% agree with Malachi. I think it can be an insult for sure. I think that some guys get the wrong term of gatekeeper, but yeah, again, kind of going back to my Donald Cerrone take, it's guys that are, you have to fight. Guys that are there, they're either top 10, top 5, and they always seem to be in that category. Some of those guys don't have championship level, but a lot of them do. So I don't necessarily consider it an insult. It's all about context and who said it and how it was phrased.
Absolutely. I think that's a really good point, because there's different levels of a gatekeeper. Sean Sterling even saying Derek Lewis is a gatekeeper, which is a great point because he is,
Yeah.
Greatest knockout artist of all time in the heavyweight division. But technically he still is a gatekeeper at that point. Who is going to be fighting next weekend, actually, which is going to be a fun one, I believe. But, Blake, since you didn't really get to get commentary on much of the fights, I'll let you break down the next one that we saw. Michelle Pereira, versus I think Ihor Patera. That's how you say it. But, those guys brought it. Now, Ihor is someone who's very good at playing the heel role, right? If you do remember, Ihor knocked out Shogun Hua, and then he did a Fortnite dance. And that was not very coming to many of the fans that watched that fight. And then for his favorite Jose Aldo moment when he was talking about it this week, he said his favorite Jose Aldo moment was him getting knocked out by Conor McGregor. So playing an excellent heel role in Brazil. Like surprised he made it out alive, but he did get choked out. So, didn't really make it out conscious. But Blake, Blake, Michelle, not Malachi, Michelle Pereira versus Ihor Patera. he ends up, landing a left punch or left straight, I believe, or left jab that actually drops. And the right hand actually didn't even connect. It was a left punch, does a backflip, kind of knees his head or maybe his neck a little bit, but then jumps the guillotine, gets the finish. Thoughts on the fight overall, and did you think it was going to be overturned just because of what they were doing with the review?
Overall, Michel Pereira looked phenomenal. I mean, he is what you would call the bang that is injected into the veins of the UFC. Every fight he comes out in is electric, to say the least. You never know what he's going to do. You never know what he's going to bring as far as strikes to the table. And I thought today he actually had a really good game plan. He went in there. His striking was good. He said that previously he had trained with Ihor Pretoria, so he knew what was going to happen and he knew what his strengths and weaknesses were. And I think that was a huge key for this fight because he's actually been in the octagon with this guy before in practice, and that obviously played a part. Now, when it comes to, shout out to Michel Pereira for getting the finish. When it comes to the knee, I'm going to go with what DC and Anik and Felder said on the commentary. It was very questionable because technically, usually he likes to land that on his feet, and he's actually going for a heel strike when he does that backflip. It is a risky move. You never know really what's going to happen because nobody else does that. Like it's Michel Pereira does that. Like you don't see Conor McGregor doing backflips onto guys' faces. So you never know really where it's going to land. And the fact that today we saw it land in a weird position where his shin caught some of his chin, a lot of it caught his chest. I was worried because I've never seen that. I've never seen that controversy where they were curious of how that was going to affect the fight. Obviously, the ref didn't stop it in the meantime, and then he goes on to get the finish by submission. So you're like, okay, are you going to take away the dub? Are you going to call it a draw? Is this going to be a John Jones type situation where you're going to get the loss or no contest, I guess, because it was an illegal strike that led to a submission or led to the end of the fight? But after they showed it multiple times from multiple different angles, I'm cool with the dub. Again, fantastic finish for Michel Pereira. And it was a tad controversial, but I was like, man, I don't know. Like how that's a unique individual situation. So I was really curious about how they were going to score that or what. I didn't know what the outcome was. And I don't know about you guys, Malachi and Gilly Gang. I don't know what you guys thought that was. Were you guys worried at all about how the outcome was going to go? Or do you think they were going to take that dub away or what? Don't all speak at once. It's okay.
Yeah. I see. Okay. So my thing was, first of all, that backflip was insane. Like, you knock a guy down, and then like your first thought isn't like I'm gonna jump on him, so I'm gonna backflip knee him in the face. That's crazy. For me it was tough because after I saw everyone kind of convening, I was like, oh, they're gonna take this away. But I feel like typically, and it's kind of common amongst most sports, is like if you don't call it in the moment, I think it's hard to then let the action continue, and then a guy wins, and then you're like, oh, actually, we're gonna go back.
Yeah.
So that I feel like that would have been more controversial than anything. And like I don't know the exact rule book. I guess is there an argument for kneeing a down opponent? I don't know. Either way, regardless, I don't even care, man. Like that was crazy entertaining, just like one of the most fascinating things I've seen in a fight. So illegal or not, whatever. Like that was fun for me. I was having a great time. I was laughing. So shout out to Michel Pereira.
I don't think they was going to take it in Brazil, not his home country.
Well, and what do they, Malachi? What do they say? They say you heard. I forget who said it earlier in the fight, but it was like, "Oh, you're fighting in Brazil. You're already down one round." Like it
pretty much.
It doesn't matter.
Pretty much.
I think what I took away from this fight was that Michel Pereira is essentially the UFC equivalent of Jeff Hardy. That's just what we're gonna get out of him. We saw that, like Jeff Hardy, whilst he was doing his entrance last time, at least he did a dance. and Jeff loves dancing down the entranceway while his brother's getting piled on by chairs. But I that's kind of what I saw. But kind of to build on that, and Brian, I'll let you kind of go on off this one. What do you think the ceiling is for Michelle Pereira? Because he went up from 170 to 185. He's more comfortable this weight. He fills out a lot more. He brings such a uniqueness to the cage that I think people forget how skilled he is and how much power that he actually has as well. So, just what do you think is the ceiling for this guy?
Yeah, he's undefeated at middleweight, yeah.
I believe so.
Yeah. So it's hard for me to say like, oh, he can't be a champion. That's such a tough division, is kind of the thing. It's like, man, you could beat 4 middleweights in a row, and then you run into any, Sean Strickland, Jared Cannonier, Marvin Vittori, these guys, it's just so hard. Izzy, even, he's not a champion. Man, like it's hard to project the ceiling of anyone, just because it's like, my first thought is like, you probably won't be a champion, but that's not because you don't have championship, you're not a championship caliber fighter. It's just that's a fucking killer's row of guys, So listen, he's gonna have a lot of fun fights. He may go on a long winning streak and he may become like, I don't think that he can't. It's just, for me, like, that's just a hard thing to say, just because, like, for the longest time, up until Sean Strickland, or I guess technically up until Alex Pereira did it, nobody was champion,
Yeah.
So yeah, it's tough, but he's a guy that can definitely, obviously, find success. He has. He's gonna have a lot of fun fights, and probably potentially headlines on fight nights at that weight class, and we'll see. But he's definitely a guy that I think can work his way up to fighting those top tier guys, and then kind of seeing where he goes from there.
Absolutely. And I think, go ahead, Blake. My bad.
Oh, no, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I think Brian's right. It's one of those divisions that, like, the lightweight division has become stacked. It reminds me a lot of the welterweight division, where any guy who's good at welterweight, you're like, man, where can he go? It's like, well, he's got a litany of people that he has to go through. And it's just like the lightweight division now. Like, there's a litany of guys that you're going to have to go through. And it's, how are you going to stack up against them? Because it's not just like, hey, there's the top 3, and then everybody else outside of that is, it is what it is. It's like, no. The top 10 are like solidified top 10, just like welterweight division.
And to continue on that middleweight murderous row, Caio Borralho, absolutely destroying and flatlining Paul Craig. And this will be the last one that we cover tonight before we play our favorite game, Guess the Bonus. But man, absolutely flatlined Paul Craig. And, I think this was a really, not to make it sound that way, but it was very easy for Cal, right? He was able to land the punches that he was able to do, just because for Paul Craig, he wasn't able to keep his head out of the sky. For a guy being that tall, I believe he's the 4th tallest fighter in the middleweight division. He kept his head straight up in the air, and that led to him just getting knocked out. And something he did as well was not strike at all. He was willing to just go sit on his guard. So Blake, I'll toss this one to you, my man. Do you think, because we're talking and continuing on the middleweight division, do you think someone like Borralho, who is now ranked, I believe he just beat the 13th ranked guy, do you think he's someone with just having the multifaceted skill set that he does, not only on the feet but the ground too, is able to contend for a title within the next 16 or 18 to 24 months or so?
I think he is. And before I really get on this, before I get down this rabbit hole, I believe that we need to start calling Caio Borralho Clark Kent, because every time he fights, he goes in there as Superman, and then as soon as that is done, he goes into the interview and he's back to Clark Kent. He puts the glasses on and nobody can recognize him. I think that's hilarious, first of all. Second of all, it brings a little bit more character to the guy, in the sense of, and even what is their little team called, the Fight Nerds, or whatever. So like, yeah, the Fight Nerds. So it all plays like right into the hand. Like, we need to start calling this guy Clark Kent. I think that Cal has a ton of skill, and he doesn't seem overly eager as far as inside the octagon. I think he works his plan, plans his work, works his plan really well. Especially versus a guy like Paul Craig, who is very dangerous on the ground. He spoke a lot about, oh, I've upped my striking game, and then it looked like none of that happened inside the octagon. It looked like he reverted back to his old ways, and any of that new training that he might have done, or any of the confidence that he had, was quickly diminished when he stepped in there and Cal really started to put the beat into him. So, but it's a good opponent to beat, because Paul Craig can be extremely dangerous, especially on the ground. We know he's got an elite submission game. So first of all, beating a ranked opponent, huge. He's been on a huge fight win streak so far. And what can he do in this division in the middleweights? I'm sorry, in the welterweights?
No, you're right. You're right. Middleweight.
I'm sorry, middleweights. Yeah, okay. He's got a long way to go. And there's a lot of guys in front of him that can be deadly, but he called out Jared Cannonier. I mean, he wants the number 4 guy. So he wants to jump from 13 to 4. Cool. I want to see it. I don't want you to rush into something and get humbled, but maybe it's a lesson learner for you. Maybe he's one of these guys like Superman. Once he gets beaten, he gains energy and gains knowledge from that, and it makes him stronger in the future. It's a big jump. It would be a huge jump, but I think that he's got a lot of guys to go through, but he's definitely got all the skill and all the talent to do it. So it'll be very interesting to see how far Clark Kent will go.
Yeah, maybe he's got some of that Saiyan blood. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
Malachi.
I actually, because we were talking about Michelle Pereira, I would like to see them two fight. Now,
Oh,
for
yeah.
Kyle, it won't make no sense to go down and
No.
fight somebody. Obviously, I think he do need a top 10, top 5 guy. But I would like to see Michelle, because even they said on the commentary, like, Michelle at middleweight is way different at welterweight. Like, I got his record pulled up, and like his last 4 fights at welter was decision. He was winning by decision. He jumped up to middleweight and get 3 finishes out the gate. So I would like to see how Kyle handle I can't get the word, a crazy fighter like Michelle. I would like to see how Kyle handle a guy like him. But like I said, for Michelle, it looks good. For Kyle, man, keep aiming forward. And I like to see like a top 5 for Kyle.
And to that point, Brian, if he does get that top 5 or that number 4 in Jared Cannonier, and Malachi, we don't blame you, bro. It's 2:00 in the morning. So saying unconventional or whatever you were gonna say, don't blame you. But
Facts. Thank you.
But as far as the potential Jared Cannonier matchup, Brian, do you think that's a matchup that goes well for Cal, or do you think that's a matchup that Jared is too much for him when it comes to the power side of things?
No, I think he can win that fight, and if you do, man, call for a championship. Like Jared was fighting for it not too long ago. Jared's as good as anybody in that division. So, and not only that, but you're a new face. The top guys in the middleweight have kind of been that way for a while. So you take one of those guys out, and you're right there. And I know that Whitaker and Hamzat are going to fight soon, so that's probably a number 1 contenders match. So you got Izzy versus DDP. Obviously, after that, then you're kind of the division's open. So, hey man, shoot for the stars. You lose, it's like, okay, well, I lost to Jared Cannonier, who's great, who beat the former champion Sean Strickland. So you're not really losing much, especially if it's a close fight. So yeah, like I'm a fan of guys shooting. Like I think there's a lot of guys who are either unranked or ranked not super high that are as good as the top tier guys. So yeah, man, like I'd love to see it. And like Malachi said, like you lose, and it's an experience. So I'm with it.
Kind of like Usyk tonight, you know what I mean? I mean, it's
Yeah.
not like he really shot his shot, but he was way lower in the rankings. But it shows, like, really with the UFC and MMA and how far as it's evolved. You see with a lot of rankings, like, put any 2 guys in the top 15 together, and you're gonna get a very competitive matchups. Like, of course, styles, withheld, right? You put Derek Lewis versus DC, you know what you're gonna get at that point, right? But for most of the fights, especially just in modern UFC times, they're so well rounded that you can throw any two guys in the top 10, top 15 together and really just get an excited matchup. So, yeah, closing out here tonight, guys. I know, Malachi, you haven't been here before, but we do something here called Guess the Bonus, right? So, what it is, I tell you how many bonuses it is. Now, I know you, like myself, watching Canelo, watching the Hawks, or sorry, the Wolves versus the Nuggets, right? So a couple of them were on the prelims. I usually like giving out a number. 4 performance of the night awards. So no fight of the nights, just 4 performance awards. 2 on the main card, 2 on the prelims. Blake, you know how this goes, so I'll let you do it first so Malachi can kind of get a feel for how that looks. So 4 bonuses, like I said, my man. Give me your guess, Blake.
Ooh, okay. I was trying to tweet this out and I got sidetracked because I had to clean the house today, but I was trying to tell everybody, watch that. What is the one rule we have on this show, John? It's watch that goddamn prelims, my man. They're always good. So I'm going to go with a couple from the prelims. I think my man Mauricio Ruffy looked so good tonight. I thought he was clean. They kept trying to compare him to Conor McGregor. I could see flashes of stylistic points of where they got that. But I think he looked really good. So I'm going to go Mauricio Ruffy with a TKO over Jamie Malarkey. I'm going to go the Drakkar Klose and Joaquim Silva fight was really good. So I want to go performance for Drakkar Klose, and I cannot believe that he did not knock Joaquim Silva out with that unique body slam while he was trapped in the guillotine. That was crazy. You and I were talking about this, obviously, during the fight. The fact that he bounced his face straight off the mat and Silva didn't go out was crazy. So credit to Silva. So I'm going to give those 2. Let's see. Oh, I got to give one to Jose Aldo, because Aldo came out of retirement. You never know how guys are going to look when they come out of retirement, and he looked like he was a young gun again. He was crisp. He was fast. He just took every bit of that fight to Jonathan Martinez. Jonathan Martinez is a guy who's been in some absolute wars lately. So I'm going to go those 3, and then maybe you give one to Michel Pereira, just because he looked so clean and didn't hardly take any damage. So I'm gonna go those. I'm gonna go Drakkar Klose. I'm gonna go Mauricio Ruffy, and then Aldo and Pereira.
Gotcha. Malachi, you kind of see how it rolls. You want to give it a shot? Give me your 4 guesses: 2 on the main card, 2 on the prelims.
I go with Ruffy as well. I didn't watch the early prelims, but that knockout I saw all over social media.
Watch the goddamn prelims, Malachi.
I usually do, bro. I do, man.
Usually Malachi's there at the fights covering them live.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I am watching all the prelims. Just man, the NBA had me shook today. And
I get it.
Drake and Kendrick. I'm sorry, y'all. Drake and Kendrick 2 off, so I had me shook. But I go with Ruffy as well. And I go with Brito. I can't say his first name. I'm not even gonna try it. I'll let you guys pronounce it. But yeah, Brito knockout over Jack Shore, and Michelle and Kyle, just the hometown heroes.
Not bad. Yes, Brian, close us off and give us your final picks, brother.
Right guy.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna go Drakkar Klose. I thought he fought a really good fight. Definitely gonna go Ruffy for the prelims. I would say for the main card, I kind of want to go with my guy Alex Smith. I don't think that he got it, but it's probably Michel Pereira and Cow. I'm guessing for the main card.
Yeah, I mean it's gonna be tough for Alex Smith to get it while he's still rehabbing off of that quarterback injury for the Commanders there, Brian. But I actually slipped up and I called him Alex Smith earlier too. So
did I call that? My bad.
But actually, for Brian and Malachi, you got 3 out of 4 correct. You know, it was Michel Pereira and Cow. Those were the 2 on the main card, right? And then for the prelims, Rufi, right, like you said, and then actually the first one, it was Alexandre Costra over Kevin Borjas.
Really?
That was the first fight of the card, and I always like to see that because typically you see you know, those early prelim fighters, they'll get a really good knockout, but it'll get outshined by something else or just, you know, recency bias. Dana White will give the, you know, whoever that. But I do like that the first fight of the night did get a bonus on that. And typically, Blake, come on now, you should know this. Performance of the awards, 99% of the time goes to finishes. It's very rare that a performance bonus goes to a fight unless, you know, usually it's fight of the night when it comes to that side of things.
I think I was playing into the hometown Brazilian, like, okay, he like the moment got me. I think
I do believe it's 4 Brazilians that got it. If Alessandro Costa is a Brazilian,
I believe he. Oh, I don't know.
I might have to look that up. But yeah, outside of that, looks like 3, if not, let's see. Yeah, actually, he is out of Brazil. No, he's out of Mexico. Sorry. Anyways, but yes, 3 out of 4 getting it there. But guys, we made it. End of the show. Almost an hour deep. Malachi, I know you kind of came here last second, bro. So I really do appreciate you joining in with us and giving us
Thank you for having me, man.
feedback and just kind of bringing yourself to the show, man. You're always just great energy, man. So appreciate that, Brian. Likewise, man. You know what I mean? I know we were just kind of floated the idea earlier as well. And Blake, for you making it, appreciate you. I know you had boyfriend duties.
I was trying, bro. I was trying.
You were doing what you got to do. But final thoughts, guys. Final thoughts before we close it out, real quick. Brian, I'll let you start off, and we'll go around the horn.
This was a good card. I feel like, you know, we could doubt, but the UFC rarely misses. I'm not gonna lie. Like, they've been on this shit. Say whatever you want about Dana. There's, you know, other shit, but in terms of putting on a good product, man, the UFC knows how to do it. So this was a great card. Shout out to my guy Steve. You'll be back. Anthony, as Michael Bisping likes to say, my bad for calling you Alex Smith, bro. Can't wait to see you on the pod. Yeah, good card. Good night of fights. Viva Brazil.
Viva Brazil. Malachi.
Yeah, coming off that high from 300, 301, definitely, since people was already doubting it, 301 delivered and cleared those doubts up with some amazing fights tonight. So I can't complain.
Blake, wrap us up, buddy.
Before I say anything, I want to shout out to the commenters. Sean Sterling's always in our comments, and we appreciate it, Sean, man. You are constantly watching the show. We love it. We love the fans, my man. So we really appreciate that. And also shout out to my man Jake Weirs. He's a new viewer today. I actually recruited him about 20 minutes before I got here, and he was a commenter in the comments as well. So that's pretty cool. We got a little new subscriber on the show. So I wanted to shout out to all you guys for just supporting us and watching us. And I know depending on where everybody's at, it's 1, 2, 3 a.m. sometimes. So we stay up late to do these kind of things. But for 301, you know, like Brian and Malachi both said, coming off the weight of 300, I thought 301 was amazing, and it's in Brazil. Brazil always puts on a good show. The crowd was hyped as hell tonight. I thought the fights were great. Like I said, name value might not have struck people when they were first looking at it, but talent-wise and execution-wise, the whole card was fantastic. We got everything we wanted. We got knockouts. We got great wars. We got decisions. We got submissions. So, like, the whole card in general to me was fantastic, and I just like being here and you know, doing this show with these beautiful people, my man.
Hey, you know, we you know, I think Malachi is probably the most professional out of all of us because he's the one that actually covers these fights. But you know, most of us don't really get paid that much to do this. You know what I mean? But hey, honestly, like you were saying, Blake, it's just still such a blessing to be able to come here, talk fights with you guys. You know, just being able to do this, have this flat platform that Dave gives us. Of course, shout out to the main man, Dave Van Auken, and Fight Bananas for allowing us to do this. But as always, you know, from Blake, Malachi, Brian, and myself, we do appreciate everyone that's joined us here after UFC 301. We will catch you after the next fight, but until then, you guys have a great